Welcome to the Nancoverse podcast, where we discuss what's happening in this crazy universe of ours through my lens and my mic. First of all, I would want to render a little bit of an apology for all my listeners for not being for not being consistent at all. I do not want to make any excuses. I do not want to pin the blame on somebody for not being as consistent as I would have liked to be with this podcast. And in the essence of accountability, I do want to say that this podcast that I'm doing is not with any guest. It is by myself. Because sometimes you cannot wait for people to show up. You have to do things on your own. And I'd been wanting to do this podcast by myself anyway. So the idea right now is to actually analyze what's happening in this world of ours. We all get newspapers. I don't know how many of us are reading newspapers though. I get the Indian Express. I used to get the Hindu, but I've stopped because I don't have enough money. Hindu, come on, man. I'm just kidding. Yeah, but one newspaper is enough. If you subscribe to two newspapers, your room just gets filled with paper and it is so annoying. I don't know how many of you have faced this, but if you live in a smaller space and you subscribe to a lot of newspapers, you're going to be filled up with paper. So I had to stop the Hindu and I get the Indian Express. And sometimes it's really fascinating to see what's happening in this world, see what's happening in your city, what's happening in the country, what's happening in the world. And the idea for me is to read the newspaper when I don't have guests on and try and analyze what's happening. So there are few articles in the newspaper that I would want to read and analyze and understand and actually bring to notice to people who are listening. Like something as interesting as this, man. It says pedestrians, motorcyclists account for 85% of road deaths in Delhi. Let's be honest. Whoever lives in Delhi knows how difficult it is to walk the roads, man. Like, you never know when are you gonna die, bro. You never know who's gonna kill ya. Being a pedestrian on the roads of Delhi is so it's dangerous. And we all know people who like to cycle as well, which is a very healthy activity, I would say. Cycling is a very healthy activity, yes. But it is also very dangerous, especially on the roads of Delhi because the traffic is so dense and there are so many cars and so many people on the roads and everybody likes to honk. If you're riding a cycle and somebody honks behind you, it just shakes your entire cycle. It shakes your soul, actually. It's so loud. Pedestrians, motorcyclists and cyclists are the most unsafe on Delhi roads. Data on fatal accidents shared by Delhi Transport Department from 2020 shows the first two categories in fact account for 85% of all accident deaths in the city. Pedestrians and motorcyclists. Damn, man, these two categories of people are extremely at risk of death. Even though a lot of people like to trash on motorcyclists, because motorcyclists are, they're like the snakes of the road. They can just enter anywhere. They can, especially people who are in cars, they like to trash on motorcyclists a lot because they feel like, two-wheelers are the people. ये तो कहीं भी घुस जाते हैं हर जगह मतलब इन्होंने हॉर्न बजा बजा के कहीं भी अपना वाहन घुसा लेते हैं ये लोग. But they're also extremely at risk of deaths. So we need to have a little more empathy with these people. Between 2020 and 2021, the number of fatal accidents increased by 13%. As per data in 2020, a total of 4,178 accidents occurred in Delhi, of which 1,163 were fatal. A total of 3,992 people were injured and 1,196 persons died on spot or on the way to the hospital. This is such a sad statistic. 1,196 deaths is a lot of deaths. There are 365 days in a year. And we've had around 1,200 people dying on spot or on the way to the hospital. That's almost like 4 deaths per day. which is extremely sad, man. This could be anybody. Anyway, this could be, yeah. Last year, the city recorded 4,720 accidents, 1,239 fatalities, and 4,273 injuries. The injuries part is also extremely like it just really shakes my conscience a little bit because I mean, I don't know what it feels like to die. We all will feel that one day. Nobody lives forever, but I do know people who live with accident injuries are they can be, I mean, the degrees might vary from very severe to not that severe, but living with an injury is not very pleasant. It can be very, it can be it can really break people, and I think we all know somebody who has an accident injury. That can be very very disheartening, and taking the people who take care of people who somebody who has might have paralysis, or somebody whose leg is not working or hands are not working, that can be very difficult for the people who take care of such people, and even for the dignity of the people who are injured, it is a very big factor. So I think we need to work on this fear, have lesser people who get injured, and obviously lesser people who die, because even deaths are very difficult for families to reconcile with. We all have lost a loved one at some point in our lives, and it's a very very difficult thing to reconcile with. Cases in 2020 had declined in comparison to 2019, ostensibly because of a lockdown due to COVID. Data shows that pedestrians 40% and motorcyclists 45% are the most vulnerable road users and account for 85% of all deaths, along with cyclists 4%. About 89% of road accident deaths occurred among these vulnerable road users, which is higher than the national average of 57%. Vulnerable road users. It's a very nice way to uh, put how people are vulnerable. Cyclists, two wheelers, pedestrians. These people are vulnerable road users, and I think a little bit of empathy for people who are in four wheelers would go a long way. And 90% of all victims were men. Of the women and girls who were killed, 83% were pedestrians or pillion riders, which indicates that women are more at risk while walking on two wheelers. Well, which indicates that women are more at risk while walking and two wheelers, where most pillion riders do not wear helmets. Reads the report analysis prepared by the lead agency of Road Safety Branch Transport Department. The largest proportion of deaths occurred among male adults aged between 20 and 39 years. Among women, road traffic fatality risk was highest over age of 60. Heavy vehicles are responsible for 44% of road crashes, followed by light motor vehicles such as cars and two wheelers. The vehicles could not be identified in 51% of fatal accidents, which were recorded as hit and run fatal crashes. Man, hit and run. 51% of fatal accidents could not be identified. This is such a phenomena. You you are killed by somebody, I don't even know who killed you. Yeah, you don't know who to feel happy for. A total of 605 fatal hit and run deaths were recorded in 2020, and of all the deaths, 48% were pedestrians and 43% motorcyclists. Cars, jeeps, taxis, and heavy vehicles were largely to blame for deaths of pedestrians and motorcyclists, the report found. Further, weekends seem like a more dangerous time. Weekends, baby. Be very careful about the weekends, man. Most people like to go out. Most people like to get drunk, and get a little lit, and get behind the wheels. And weekends, I mean, Sundays are a little more chill on the roads, but weekends can be extremely dangerous, it says. But yeah, man, this is quite a fascinating read. Further, weekends seem like a more dangerous time with accident fatalities peaking on Saturdays, obviously, and Sundays, which is not that obvious, but yeah. A large number of fatalities were recorded on Sundays between midnight and 2 a.m. This is such a phenomena, man, because you don't really want to ask people to stay at home just because you can get killed between midnight and 2 a.m. on Sundays. But this makes a lot of sense because people want to get home after a day of chilling. I don't know, they've been brunching somewhere, drinking their alcohol, getting high, and then they want to get home because Mondays are a work day for most people. If you're a chef, you chill on Mondays. Yeah, but yeah, between midnight and 2 a.m., a large number of fatalities occur. So be very careful if you're on the roads between midnight and 2 a.m. The high number of unknown cases indicates lacking enforcement in high risk areas where hit and run cases took place. The aim behind preparing the data is to curb accidents and improve road engineering. It will be shared with all agencies concerned like PWD, Delhi Traffic Police, and those that look after roads. Through this report, the department will inform and provide guidance to all stakeholders for action on motorcycle helmets, seat belts, enhance enforcements during high risk times, and safer streets for motorcyclists and pedestrians. I wonder how many of us actually wear a seatbelt behind a car. Like, I was with this German dude recently, and we were going to a wedding, and he was sitting next to me, behind in the car, like not in the front. And this guy would wear a seatbelt, and this was is actually quite a culture shock for him and for me to see him wear a seatbelt, and for him to not see me wear a seatbelt behind. Because as most of us would know, most of us Indians would know that we don't really wear a seatbelt behind. It's more of an enforcement thing. We think that police will never stop us because we are not wearing a seatbelt behind. But it's also a matter of safety. It's also a matter of taking care of your own health and taking care of the health and safety of your loved ones. Helmets are another big aspect. Lot of us, a lot of young people especially, do not want to wear helmets because it's not cool. Who the hell wants to have that freaking nutshell over your skull while you ride a sexy ass bike? Everybody wants to show their face, especially if the bike is cool. But it's important, and it's not just about the coolness of the bike. Actually, it's a matter of understanding that you gotta wear helmets, man. You have to wear helmets. If you don't wear a helmet and you meet with an accident, the chances of you breaking your skull open is a lot higher. I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of people end up screwing up their heads because they do not wear helmets. And that is extremely sad, man, because you want the best for people. A friend of mine recently met with an accident in Goa, actually, not in Delhi, but in Goa. And I'm so grateful that he's okay and he's not hit his head, because thankfully he was wearing a helmet. I cannot even begin to imagine what would have been the situation if he was not wearing a helmet. So I don't know how many people will be listening to this, but I really want you guys to wear a damn helmet if you're riding two wheelers. And pedestrians, man, I really feel for you guys, especially if you're living in a city like Delhi or Mumbai or Bangalore or all of these like really busy streets, cities with busy streets. Because man, this can be so difficult to just get around. If somebody just hits you, what do you do about it? 51% of the cases go without even identifying who did this to you. So this is an extremely weird situation that we are all in. I hope the situation gets better. I hope these reports have an effect on the engineering of the roads. The engineering of the roads, man, sometimes I wonder about this shit. Like, are they even doing anything about the roads? Like, who are these people who make the roads? Why is it that after every monsoon we don't have roads? Like, aren't they supposed to go to school to learn how to make a road? These engineers, bro, stop getting high, stop getting drunk in your school and learn how to make a damn road properly, man. What are you even doing? The roads are really weird on Indian streets. Yeah. I was watching this really interesting show on Netflix yesterday. It was called Midnight Asia. And Midnight Asia is this show about culture and food and just the nightlife of different cities across Asia. It was showing cities like Taipei, Tokyo, and Philippines, and Manila, all these, and Mumbai as well. And I was just looking at some of the roads in Taipei and Tokyo and Seoul and Korea. The roads looked so good. Man, like the roads were just looking like they were butter, like they were shining, they were clean, like they were clean. Even though Tokyo is a very densely populated city, it's actually it is the most populous city in the world. But the roads looked so good, and Seoul, the roads were so nice. And then when you kind of look at like roads in our cities, man, it's just so disappointing. It's like, hey man, get your shit together, guys. Whoever's making the roads, the government is involved in this sometimes. I was actually talking to one of the engineers, the contractors who makes roads, and they were telling me about the rampant corruption in this whole situation that we have going on. And I'm 100% sure it depends from place to place, but we have a long road when it comes to making roads. So yeah, hoping for the best. Now I'm gonna move on to an op-ed in the Indian Express, written by Benita Fernando, and it says, "Why I wear a mask? It's a chance. It is a chance, the healthy gift to the vulnerable in the pandemic." 3 months after the pandemic started, my family faced the stressful diagnosis of cancer. Whoa, that started heavy. A loved one would have to undergo a prolonged treatment plan spanning up to a year. If the pandemic was excruciating, managing cancer in it seemed doubly so. I wonder how many of us would have had to go to a situation like this where we did not just have to look after our own selves and our loved ones that they don't get COVID, but also people who had comorbidities like cancer and diabetes and all these other diseases that can take such a big mental and financial and physical toll on people. Benita, I feel you, man. If the pandemic was excruciating, managing cancer in it seemed doubly so. The vaccine was a distant hope at this point. A flu episode could be difficult to manage for a cancer patient with suppressed immunity, so one couldn't imagine what COVID might mean. It came to define my family's perspective on masking up, one that hasn't changed till date. The chance of isolation or social distancing was impractical if you're making multiple trips to hospitals and labs, as we were. It was hard to say if we, as patients and caregivers, would dodge the virus or not. The best we could do, all we could do, was to just sit tight behind our masks. Not all may agree, but for a cancer patient, a mask can determine the difference between lesser suffering or more, life and death. It's knowledge that I wasn't aware of some years ago. For a decade, I lived in the vicinity of one of South Asia's best and busiest cancer centers in Mumbai. On mundane trips to buy groceries or take the bus, I'd see patients, many of them children, wearing masks in crowded street corners and food stalls around the hospitals. In my biased ignorance, I, like many others, assumed that the patients had to hide their faces. I am getting a call. Damn. Wearing masks in crowded street corners and food stalls around the hospital. In my biased ignorance, I, like many others, assumed that the patients had to hide their faces. Perhaps they didn't want to be contagious. A mask in public was a sign of weakness and a sign of sickness. It was ominous unless you were a camera touting tourist. It was similar to why people avoid going to a doctor. Seeking a diagnosis means you're sick, not the other way around. That's heavy, dude. Even today, when I sometimes see people wearing a mask on the streets, I wonder, man, I wonder if these people have COVID. I know this sounds very wrong, but it's it's a very weird wiring of the brain where we start to think of people who do the right thing are the people who have the thing that might be spreading the virus. And I mean, I think one should wear a mask. It's as simple, especially in public. Just wear a mask, man. You know, it's not a biggie. If you don't have a mask, that's a different thing. Get a mask. But if you don't have a mask, get a mask. And especially in public, man, because you never know. Like people, people like her, like her parents have cancer, and if they catch a cold, there's a very high likelihood that they will not survive. So, damn, things changed dramatically with the cancer diagnosis. In the last 2 years, I have told off customers at markets for wearing their masks incorrectly or for not wearing them at all. I have made snide comments in packed elevators and shamed people into pulling up their masks. She's the kind of person that is roasted by a lot of people, especially in private groups and people who talk to each other when they talk about, oh, there was this girl, man. She was totally telling me to wear my mask. She's such a this and such a that. But you never know where somebody is coming from, So a bit of empathy goes a long way. Yeah, I have made snide comments in packed elevators and shamed people into pulling up their masks. The municipal corporation should be thankful. All this is only because I knew that I couldn't afford to catch a virus that would create a cross mutation of irreversible crisis in the family. Today I find great joy and even liberation in masking up. I no longer smile politely at dull jokes or casual sexism. My eye makeup has improved significantly, and I can talk to myself in public without drawing attention. Damn, I never thought about that. I can talk to myself in public without drawing attention. This is something that I do anyway, so I think wearing a mask and talking to myself goes hand in hand. Nice. My family wore masks as much as possible through the course of the cancer treatment, sometimes doubling up in the second wave. It's impossible for cancer patients to be masked up all the time, not only because they have difficulty breathing or are panicking or want a good cry or a wave of nausea has hit them. Sometimes it's logistically unmanageable, like with feeding tubes that are needed in certain cancers. If patients eat when they can or at appointed hours, it means that some of this has to be done in crowded spots, which is practically all of Mumbai. That's true. Mumbai is crowded. Mumbai is so damn crowded, man. All my Mumbai listeners, damn dude, like you gotta get rid of some people, but that's not happening anytime soon because a lot of people are coming in every damn day. I think there are more people walking into Mumbai than there are people walking out of Mumbai. 100%. Mumbai is very crowded. It's why the current messaging around mild Omicron is disconcerting. It's all obleast to start with. I don't know what that means. Hey man, and if I get the pronunciation of some words wrong and if I'm not able to read a sentence properly, just cut me some slack because the whole point of doing this is to make me better and make you better. So, ableist. Can somebody throw some light on this word? Ableist. Ableist. This is a very interesting word. Ableist. Ableist. What does this even mean, dude? Ableist. The word. Huh. The world wasn't built with people with disabilities in mind, and because of that, the world we live in it is inherently ableist. Oh, it's like nobody gives a damn about people who have problems. But that's sad. Our approach towards the pandemic and safety measures is also true of how cities are planned in India. So long as you are young and able, you should have no problem crossing the average busy intersection in an Indian city. If you aren't, go figure. The slow change of messaging from cloth masks to N95 ones is in the course of the Omicron surge is also part of this misguided approach. Even the cheapest N95 mask in the market is not affordable for large sections of India or even feasible. Seeing through cancer in a pandemic showed us that masking up is the work of a community. The times that we had to remove our masks, we did so. Thankful to the people around us in hospitals who were dutifully masking up. We breathe easy because of them. We often assume that cancer, like COVID, is something that happens to other people and that we will somehow be insulated from it. It took Omicron to show us that COVID can happen to just about every other person in our circles. In the hubris of our youth or ableism, we forget that one day we could be in a position where we are desperate for a fighting chance, and the only way to get it is the community stays masked up. It is a very fascinating read, and I feel Benita Fernando of the Indian Express has written a very personal, anecdotal, and a very important piece where she talks about how it's very important to wear a mask. Just wear a mask, man. Like, you never know. This word albiism. It's a very fascinating word because it's something that I've been dealing with. I sometimes tell myself, "Hey, man, I have good immunity. I don't need to wear a mask. Why do people like tell me to wear a mask? Because I don't. I'm not. I tested negative yesterday." But it's really not about that. It's about how you make other people feel sometimes. And if you are in a public place, say if you're in the metro or in the train, or you're in a very dense place like say Mumbai or say Sarojini Market in Delhi, wear a mask because there are old people out there who do not have the same physical ability to be able to fight off a virus like this, and you never know what they're going through. People really suffer because of pain and inaction of other people to take care of them. Just the other day I had this back pain, like I was working out. I did the wrong way. I did not warm up, guys. If you work out, please always warm up, even if you're whatever, like even if you might be the fittest person, but if you do not warm up, there is a very high likelihood that you will pull something, and I did. And when my lower back was hurting and I could not even lift a glass of water for my own self, I could feel how people who are unable to do the most basic things feel. We in this culture of ours where we feel like, yeah, man, you have to like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and if you're not able to do things, then there's something wrong with you. We lose a lot of empathy in understanding that people go through things. People are suffering. There's a lot of people who are suffering, and we will never know what they're going through because we just lack the empathy sometimes. And even I lack the empathy sometimes. When I'm feeling fit, I look at a fat person, I'm like, look at this fat person, they have not walked in ages, they've not been able to get their shit together, and look at me, man, with my six pack abs. But it's it's such a rude and crude way to look at life, because you never know what this person's going through in their body. Within their body only they know what kind of pain they're in. And you always want the best for other people, especially for the ones you love. But it is so damn important to have empathy, because without that we're just walking piles. We're just walking piles of garbage, like the cities that we have created for ourselves. So that was a very beautiful article by Benita Fernando. Moving on, um, moving on to an article written by Trisha Ray. The headline says, the climate costs of AI. Relationship between climate change and AI is a whisper in the air. Are we listening? This is a very fascinating read. I feel I don't know what's in it, but I'm very interested because a lot of people think that technology is going to solve all our problems. Climate change is going to be healed because of technology. We don't have to use our cars anymore to reach office, and all that petrol that's not being burnt, that's going to help us in uh, reversing climate change. But the internet takes a lot of heat, dude. Servers are not benign. But let's see what she has to say. Trisha Ray. The writer is an associate fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Trisha Ray. We often think of artificial intelligence, AI, technologies as a gateway to a future written in Chrome, operating on a virtual cloud. This techno optimism underpinned FM Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's 2022 budget speech, where AI was described as a sunrise technology that would assist sustainable development at scale and modernize the country. While there is an allure to national dreams of economic prosperity and global competitiveness underwritten by AI, there is an environmental cost. Like any issue at the nexus of technology, development, growth, and security, a cost that comes with being locked into rules about said environmental impact set by powerful actors. The race for dominance in AI is far from fair. It not only not Only do a few developed economies possess certain material advantages right from the start. They also set the rules. They have an advantage in research and development and possess a skilled workforce as well as wealth to invest in AI. North America, East Asia alone account for three-fourths of global private investment in AI, patents, and publications. We can also look at the state of inequity in AI in terms of governance. How tech fluent are policymakers in developing and underdeveloped countries? What barriers do they face in crafting regulations and industrial policy? Are they sufficiently represented and empowered at the international bodies that set rules and standards on AI? At the same time, there is an emerging challenge at the nexus of AI and climate change that could deepen this inequity. Even in the even in the industrial revolution, there were countries that had everything, and there were countries who faced because these other countries had everything. And now we have the AI revolution, and this is starting to seem a very similar situation. Especially the point about research and development. How North America and East Asia alone account for three-fourths of global private investment in AI. Fascinating. But what is the nexus between climate change and AI? Very interesting. The climate impact of AI comes in a few forms. The energy use of training and operating large AI models is one. In 2020, digital technologies accounted for between 1.8% and 6.3% of global emissions. Damn, digital technologies accounted for between 1.8% and 6.3% of global emissions. At the same time, AI development and adoption across sectors has skyrocketed, as has the demand for processing power associated with larger and larger AI models. Paired with the fact that governments of developing countries see AI as a silver bullet for solving complex socio-economic problems, we could see a growing share of AI technology linked emissions in the coming decades. The idea of sustainability is rapidly entering mainstream debates of AI ethics and sustainable development. In November 2021, UNESCO adopted the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, calling on actors to reduce the environmental impact of AI systems, including but not limited to its carbon footprint. Similarly, technology giants like Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Facebook have announced net zero policies and initiatives. These initiatives are a good sign, but they only scratch the surface. Both global AI governance and climate change policy historically are contentious, being rooted in inequitable access to resources. Developing and underdeveloped countries face a challenge on two fronts. First, AI's social and economic benefits are accruing to a few countries. And second, most of the current efforts and narratives on the relationship between AI and climate impacts are being driven by the developed West. What then is the way ahead? Like most Nexus issues, the relationship between climate change and AI is still a whisper in the wind. It is understudied, not least because the largest companies working in the space are neither transparent nor meaningfully committed to studying, let alone acting, to substantively limit the climate impact of their operations. Governments of developing countries, India included, should also assess their technology led growth priorities in the context of AI's climate costs. It is argued that as developing nations are not plagued by legacy infrastructure, it would be easier for them to build up better. These countries don't have to follow the same AI led growth paradigms as their Western counterparts. It may be worth thinking through what solutions would truly work for the unique social and economic context of communities in our global village. Global village. This word in itself is quite a trip because I've visited some big ass cities in this world, and we are not living in a village, man. But this is a very fascinating article talking about how artificial intelligence could actually lead to a climate crisis because of just the way it is built up. A lot of big companies are thinking of net zero. Net zero in itself needs to be studied a lot more, because we think of net zero as being like, yeah, man, this is the solution. You know, if net zero is very net zero is quite fascinating. It says a target of completely negating the amount of greenhouse gases produced by human activity, to be achieved by reducing emissions and implementing methods of absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. I mean, that's what they say, but most of these things don't even happen, man, because promises are easy to make and easier to break. And the internet needs a lot of bandwidth. These AI models need a lot of computing power to be implemented. And I'm a dummy in these cases. I don't know everything, but that's the whole point, man. You gotta have discussions. You gotta be able to read stuff and also understand from stakeholders as to what's really happening in these spheres. So hopefully AI will not be another one of those situations where we don't. It's more of a matter of us and them. Does your country have, does has your country really invested in these technologies? Have you been able to adopt most of your population to these technologies and help them benefit from it, rather than having them to face the consequences of climate change and the kind of repercussions these technologies might have? How the industrial revolution created an us and them and colonialism. Britishers took over almost half of the world because of their ability to be able to leverage the industrial revolution, and now we have the AI revolution. And we are building better because it's kind of like the first wave of AI for India. But I also feel like it's the first wave of AI for most countries in this world. I mean, there are countries that are doing better. As they say, three-fourth of the investment is going to Western Europe and North America and East Asia. East Asia, man. East Asia is killing it. I was talking about how the roads in Taipei and Seoul are so good. Man, that's a really, really true thing. But very, very interesting, very fascinating. Now, moving on to another very interesting article about a dispute between Assam and Arunachal. Assam Arunachal border dispute started in 1951 and it has going on till now. Man, disputes need to be resolved. In family, in countries, in states, disputes. Don't we all fight sometimes? Last month, days after Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma met with his Arunachal Pradesh counterpart Pema Khandu to discuss a permanent solution. Permanent solutions are so important sometimes. Permanent solution, quote unquote, to decades old boundary dispute between two states. Fresh tensions were reported along the border. Bone of contention 1951. Arunachal Pradesh, earlier part of Assam, now shares an about 800-kilometer boundary with it, along with which frequent flare-ups have been reported since 1990s. The roots of the dispute lie in the inner line regulation introduced by the British. Man, these British have fucked everything up. Sorry, these British really have made things so much more difficult for us to resolve. But at the end of the day, it is our own responsibility to look out for ourselves. So let's not blame everything on the British, Naman. Come on. Demarcating an imaginary boundary between plains and the frontier hills. These hills, designated in 1915 as the Northeast Frontier Tracts, make up Arunachal Pradesh today. After independence, the Assam government assumed administrative jurisdiction over the Northeast Frontier Tracts, which became the Northeast Frontier Agency (NEFA) in 1954, the Union Territory of Arunachal Pradesh in 1972, and a state in 1987. Before it was carved out of Assam, a subcommittee headed by then Assam Chief Minister Gopinath Bordoloi had made some recommendations about the administration of NEFA, which is Northeast Frontier Agency. Based on the Bordoloi Committee report of in 1951, around 3,648 square kilometers of plain areas of Balipara and Sadia foothills was transferred from the frontier tracts to Assam. This remains the bone of contention as Arunachal Pradesh refuses to accept this notification as the basis of demarcation, said a senior government official from Assam. It was arbitrary, defective, and no tribal leader from the Arunachal Pradesh was consulted before the land was transferred. They just decided to draw a line between the hills and plains, said Tabom Dai, the General Secretary, all Arunachal Pradesh student unions. Efforts at demarcation. In the 1970s, multiple efforts were made to demarcate the boundary. In April 1979, a high powered tri-party committee was constituted to delineate the boundary on the basis of Survey of India maps as well as discussions with both sides. By 1983-84, out of 800 kilometers, 489 kilometers was demarcated, but Arunachal Pradesh did not accept the recommendations and claimed large chunks of 3,648 square kilometers transferred as per the 1951 notification. Assam filed a case in Supreme Court in 1989. The court appointed a local boundary commission in 2006, headed by a retired SC judge, Supreme Court judge. It report its report in September 2014 recommended that Arunachal Pradesh get back some territory transferred to Assam in 1951 and that the two states arrive at a consensus through discussion. Nothing came of it. Nothing comes of discussion sometimes, man. Flashpoints. According to a 2008 research paper from Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis, clashes were first reported in 1992 when the Arunachal government alleged that people from Assam were building houses, markets, and even police stations on its territory. Another MP IDSA paper in 2020 said Assam had raised the issue of Arunachal encroaching on its forest land and periodically launched eviction drives. The recent flashpoint is the Lika Likabali Durpai Road. Likabali Durpai Road under the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, under construction since 2019 in Arunachal's Lower Siang district. Assam claims some part of it fall under its Dhemaji district. The road, about 65 to 70 kilometers, is meant to connect 24 villages between Arunachal's Durpai and Likabali site of dispute. Last week, a culvert under construction was burnt by unidentified miscreants from the Assam side, authorities said. Following that, there were unconfirmed reports of firing in the air by locals from the Arunachal side. This was preceded by a team from Assam police stopping the construction in the area, claiming it was touching disputed territory. The road ahead. In the last few months, CM Sarma has been discussing border issues with his counterparts in Meghalaya, Nagaland, and Arunachal. Last week, Sarma and Khandu described their meetings in Guwahati as positive, saying they were ready to conduct a ground level survey on boundary status. Man, it is so important that states in India get their shies together because, especially the northeastern states, because of the presence of China. China has a very vested interest in all of these disputes, especially Arunachal Pradesh, which it shares a border with. And if our own states are not able to get their disputes together, then I feel like it's an advantage for a country like China, which can take advantage of our own disputes. It is a good thing that we are trying to get the dispute sorted and have a discussion about these things. That's why I picked up this article because I feel it's important. It's so important for these disputes to resolve themselves. Because if there are disputes, then there is violence. And if there is violence, then there is a loss of economy. And if there is a loss of economy, then people don't make money. And if people don't make money, then people are depressed. And depression leads to bad activities, drug problems, all kinds of weird situations that we as a country would totally want to avoid. So, yeah, I hope Arunachal and Assam get it together. And yeah, I would wanna put a cap on this episode for today. These three articles that I read were extremely interesting, and I hope to do more of these. I don't, not even hope. I will do more of these. I will do more of these readings for you guys and for my own self. The idea is to get better at reading as well. If the more we read, the more we can understand what's happening in our own minds and in our own surroundings. And without reading the newspaper, I feel like we're just going to be distracted and ignorant. And that's not a good thing. So, yep. I really, really, really want to thank everyone for listening, whoever's listened to the end. And this is going to be the end of the Nancoverse podcast. See you guys on the other side. Signing out. Much love. Much love.